Yo, what's going on, people? It's your boy Adebayo Akinfenwa, and welcome back to another episode of the Beast Mode On Pod. One of the reasons why I do this is for days like this, because the person sitting opposite me is a footballing legend. Arguably one of the best keepers this country has produced. He's stood between the sticks for both Arsenal and England with style, presence, and some bad boy saves. Please, Beast Mode On family, give a warm welcome to my guy, Mr. David Seaman.
Love that.
Come on. Hey.
That's a great intro.
Oh, thank you. All right, listen, before we get started, what we do on this podcast, we give flowers. So,
Flowers?
Yeah, we give flowers,
Okay.
both figuratively and literally. This is what we do. So we'll go into what you've won, but correct me, you've won 3 league titles,
Yep.
4 FA Cups, a League Cup, and a Cup Winners' Cup.
Yep. That should add up to 9.
But listen, but what I've heard though, I've heard your passion nowadays is fishing.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard. All right, so listen, a little token from us here at the Beast Mode On is that, listen, we know normally gloves keep your hands warm, but what we've got here, we hope that on your fishing days, this will keep you warm. We've got a little something. It's just a little token.
Oh, perfect.
Come on, yes.
Perfect for me coffee.
Listen, we hope you enjoy it. So when you're fishing on them long, cold nights, you'll be thinking about Beast Mode On. You know what I'm saying?
That is so cool. Thank you
blessings.
very much.
Hey, I'm blessings.
Follows as well.
Hey, come on. We don't do things by half here. All right, cool. Let's get into this. All right. So I for myself, I always got this affiliation with those that their journey took them, especially through the lower leagues, because I'm a product of the EFL. So early days, you started Leeds, Birmingham, Queen's Park Rangers. Peterborough, as well.
Yeah.
You know, so what's your memories from those periods? And what did you take from them early stages that helped you further on?
So I went to Leeds as a 16-year-old. There wasn't like academies then. There was you could sign a schoolboy form, which when you were 15, I think it was. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go around all the teams in my area. I'm from Rotherham, so I went to Sheffield's, like Chesterfield, Doncaster, Barnsley, all them clubs, and they all wanted me. But I've always been a Leeds fan, and as soon as I knew Leeds wanted me, that's where I was going to go. Yeah. So that was at 16. So I did 2 years apprenticeship, and then I signed a 2-year pro contract. But after a year, I got released, and I was devastated. And I didn't know what I was going to do.
This was 16, right?
No, I was at 19.
Oh,
So I did 2 years
19.
apprenticeship and then a year as a pro.
All right, cool.
So 19, and I got released, and I'm thinking to myself, because Eddie Gray, who was still is a Leeds legend, he was the manager at the time, and he said, look, I'm going to have to let you go. I want to get a more experienced goalkeeper. And the first team goalkeeper then was John Lukic. Obviously, I replaced at Arsenal much later down the line, and I had no idea what I was going to do.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, that's it. I was rubbish at school. PE was my favourite subject, as you know. And so then I'm thinking to myself, well, am I going to be like a baker's delivery boy? Because my mum and dad had a grocery shop that sold fresh bread, and I used to do a Saturday job where I'd go and help the baker deliver the bread. So I'm thinking along those lines, and then literally a week later, we got a phone call. My dad says to me, he says, Peterborough have come in for you. And I was like, where's Peterborough? No idea. So it was, I went there, and the beauty of it is that I was 19, but I went straight into the first team, and they were 4th division. So it was tough.
It was, I
was 19, I was
that's
built like that.
That's what I was going to ask. Physically, as a youngster, was you small?
I was always tall.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I was always tall, but, I wasn't developed, at that age. And so, I had to learn fast, and you'd go up for a cross or corners and that, and you'd get hit.
Love them times.
And if you didn't get hit, it was a right bonus. But it was a great learning curve for me. So I had 2 years at Peterborough. I even remember going up for a cross and getting knocked out, like proper spark on, the physio coming on and chucking water on me and like, carry on.
Yeah.
All that
sponge,
sort of, yeah, exactly. So all that. And then 2 years after, I was at Peterborough for 2 years, and then Birmingham City came in and bought me, like for, I think it was about 100,000. So it was a great profit for Peterborough.
Money them times.
Went to Birmingham, who were in the second division, but they were really near the top. So my first season for Birmingham, we got promoted to the top division, like Division 1 then, but then got relegated straight away. And that's when QPR came in for me.
What league was QPR in at the time?
Top, first division.
Oh, first division.
Yeah, so then I had 4 years at QPR. My first year at QPR was on the plastic pitch. It was a shocker. It was the worst plastic pitch I've ever seen. Never mind played on.
Who was the manager at QPR at the time?
Jim Smith.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was he was one of those managers that you got a lot of inspiration from.
Right.
You know, he's great at encouragement and, you know, getting you going for a game, you know, and would have a go at you as well. But no, I like Jim. Yeah.
Early days. What you know? Are you a person where, if a manager was tough, loud, how was it in your earlier stages? Was you in regards to what you resonated with?
Yeah.
For personality wise.
So my first ever, my first ever like bollocking that I got was when I was at Peterborough, because the guy that bought me, he found out Martin Wilkinson was the coach at Leeds, and Alan Clark was the manager at the time, he got sacked, so all his coaching team left. Martin had got the job at Peterborough, and I remember I think we were playing away at York, and the ball came to me, and I caught it, and I tried to throw it over a striker, and he just jumped up, chested it down, and smashed it past me. And I remember going in at half time, and in front of everybody, he had a right go at me, you know, like, if you do that again, you know, I'm going to get you off, and blah, blah, blah. And I never forgot that. And that's probably the only time that I've had someone have a right go at me.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so that was like that, but that was like fourth division. You move that forward to like George Graham, for instance, you know, who wasn't afraid to, you know, have a go.
Yeah, yeah.
The only thing is like when a manager's having a go at you about goalkeeping stuff, I'm thinking to myself, you haven't got a clue, mate.
I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about just the differences, because my good friend's David Stockdale. So we're
fisherman.
Yeah. To be fair, proper fisherman cost me because I tried fishing. Anyway, so we're going to talk about just in regards to positioning and mindset from a goalie and anybody else, you know, on the pitch. So all right, so you've gone through all the lower. So then, how did Arsenal come about? How did you hear about it, and what was the initial feeling that that's Arsenal?
So obviously I've been at QPR for 4 years, and I was running out of contract, you know, because I wanted to see how good I could become.
Okay.
Because QPR, they were happy at staying in the division. They were always mid-table. I don't remember us ever having like a relegation battle or anything. Right. I just wanted to see, you know, like going on England trips and stuff, and then seeing people like going for trophies and that sort of thing.
You got called up for England while you was at QPR?
While I was at QPR, yeah. Okay. So I made my England debut in '88. So I didn't sign for Arsenal until 1990.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So So I'd had.
So you was doing bits.
I was doing, yeah.
You was doing bits.
And I'd done like the under-21s. I'd played like 10 times for them, and it was like looking at these England players while I was like third choice and that, you know, because I was involved in Euro World Cup Italia, so 1990.
That's the first one I can remember. I must have been 8.
Yeah.
It's the first one I can remember because I think more of my dad, like with Scalacci and Italy and his
that was Gaza as well.
Yeah, and Gaza. And
you know, so that was a big one. But I was only third choice, so I was never going to get playing or anything. You know, in the end, I broke my thumb in training, and you know, which put the frighteners up Arsenal. But I'll tell you for why in a bit. But then obviously I wanted to leave QPR. And Arsenal, so I was walking around a lake in near Slough, near Ivor. My phone went, and it was Brian Robson. And he went, "I've got someone who wants to have a word with you." I was like, "Who?" And it was Sir Alex. And he come on the phone, and he says to me, I'm going to come in for you in the summer. He says, "I want you to be my goalkeeper." I was like, "Okay." So I put the phone down to Sir Alex. And I'm now thinking I'm going to be a Man United player.
You're going to be a Man United player.
Literally about a week later, but Arsenal made a bid for me. So Sir Alex wanted me to wait till the summer, so then there was no fee because I was out of contract.
Okay, yeah.
Arsenal now make a bid for me just before transfer deadline day. And I'm like, okay. So I'm thinking to myself, well, I've lived in London for 4 years when I was at QPR. My family was settled and that. And so I go and have talks with Arsenal. We agree everything. But there was one problem. One player had to leave for me to join Arsenal, and that was John Lukic.
He must hate you.
Well, yeah, but we were mates. So, like, when we were together at Leeds, he used to pick me up, like, because he lived Chesterfield. I'm Rotherham. He used to pick me up on the way to the motorway. We'd train together. We'd warm each other up and stuff.
Did you chat to him prior? Like, when this was... So when this deal's going... Does he know he has to...
He probably knows that... You know what it's like. You find out right at the last minute, don't you?
Yeah, true that.
So he probably found out a little bit, but then he was like, no, I'm not going anywhere. So the deal fell through. So I didn't sign. I had to go back to QPR and play the rest of the season for QPR. You can imagine what that's like. Like half the fans have turned against me now.
Yeah. You said your goodbye.
And then there was... so QPR played Arsenal in that time, and I'm in goal for QPR. I've got all the Arsenal fans behind me singing, we all agree Lukey is better than Seaman.
Oh, jeez.
Like, shouting at me. And then, but what had happened, and then they were all shouting at me, you'll never play for Arsenal. And in my head, I'm thinking... Oh, yes, I will, because I've already signed the contract.
Oh, so you had already signed...
So I don't know, but this was a little bit later on.
Oh, okay.
So I'd signed it so that it meant that QPR got 1.3 from me, which was a British record for a goalkeeper then. They didn't lose out on me. So they got their money, and I was happy I was going to Arsenal.
So why... So I know with the being at home, being in London, and did you not ever look back at the Sir Alex Ferguson and the Man United bit after the deal fell through... initially?
No, because I got my mind set on. So when it fell through, excuse me, I went back to QPR, and there was Ray Wilkins, God bless him, was there, and I said to him, what would you do? Because I've got a choice of both now.
Yeah.
And he said, if you go to Man United now, you won't win trophies straight away. He said, but they will, because they're such a big club and they're rebuilding. He said, but if you go to Arsenal, you win trophies straight away. And he was right. And then after I spoke to Ray, I spoke to Don Howe, who was with coach at QPR. Don just went, get yourself to the Arsenal, lad. and that was it, yeah.
All right, so like you said, you signed in the 1990s. That was just after Arsenal won at Liverpool.
Yeah.
The 2-0.
Yeah.
Oh, I ain't gonna lie. Listen, man, I didn't like you, man, in the 90s. I didn't like you, man, in the 90s. I just remember that. All right, so you signed. You won the league that.
My first season.
Your first season.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask this then. Mindset. Going into a successful changing room, was there pressure for you to hit the ground running?
Massive.
And would you have preferred to go in when they hadn't won anything because how was your mindset in regards to that?
So my mindset was the fact that they'd won stuff, meaning that, like, that's what I walked into that dressing room where there was league champions, not from the previous season. It was 2 seasons ago. But I knew that they were winners.
Right.
And that's what I wanted.
That's what you wanted.
Because like I said to you about, I wanted to leave QPR to see how good I could get. So going into that dressing room was pressure. Not only pressure, I'm taking over from my mate. I'm taking over from a fan's favourite.
Yeah.
Because they loved Lukey. So it was like so important that,
So when you signed, was he still there?
No.
Oh,
no,
so he'd gone.
gone.
So by the time you signed, he'd gone.
Yeah. And, it was just so important to try and win the fans over.
Yeah.
And it was so weird because like the lads are like, golly, just do the twist. I'm like, what? Do the twist, and then the fans will love you. I'm like, shut up. And apparently, the Arsenal fans would sing to Lukey, like, Lukey, do the twist. And he'd do this like little jiggle. Like, and I was like, really?
Yeah.
And I just thought they were winding me up. And anyway, they all start singing. I do a little, they're like, yeah.
So that's
like,
the connection.
all right, then.
Yeah.
And then obviously my performances started showing through, and that first season I only let in 18 goals when we won the league, so that was a big tick in that box.
So that's what I was going to say. That so you quickly became the backbone, like you said, 18 goals, strong defence. So for you, what was your, when I say mentality, so because you've touched on it, like, look, there was pressure going into it. You knew that not only a bigger club, but there was a good goalie. So I'm trying to figure out, because you've actually touched on what
I wanted to do
of what you wanted to do,
but then there's a difference of, like, in your mind saying, I want to do this, and I want to do that, but then going and trying doing it, you know, because you get a lot of people now that talk a good game.
Yeah.
But when it actually comes to it, they can't. But you don't know whether you can or can't until you're actually in that situation.
That's to be fair. That's what I want to ask. And then to be fair, going into a changing room, because you've gone through so many different changing rooms, so especially in the lower leagues, and then you go into an Arsenal, and there must be characters.
Yeah.
So going into that, how was it the transitional in regards, and also what I wanted to ask in, so you know, goalie coaches, and we'll talk on the evolution. So what was the thing that stood out and did it in regards to goalie coaches in the lower leagues, and then going to Arsenal with the training?
But I never had a goalie coach in the lower leagues.
So go on,
I know. So like Peterborough, I never had a goalie coach there. So then I go from Peterborough to Birmingham, never had a goalie coach. But Ron Saunders signed me for Birmingham. He used to be the manager at Aston Villa.
Yeah,
he won the European, like the Champions League back then, and somehow he knew so much about goalkeeping positioning. And he
wasn't a goalie?
No. And he would tell his coach on what to work on me. So when I signed for Birmingham, I go to the ground to sign my contract, and all the press are there. You know, the second division, all the press are there. And then Ron Saunders says, right guys, he says, you'll see how good David is when we're going to go outside and do a few drills, a few shots. And I was like, what? I had no idea. I went, I know you've got my gloves or anything. He went, don't worry, we've got it all for you. And I was like, you can imagine, I'm like all so excited about signing, and now I've got to go out on the pitch at St Andrews and show them. And anyway, and they got some of the apprentices and that, and they were smacking these balls up. Anyway, I did all right. And to be fair to Ron Saunders, he went into the press room afterwards and said, I'm telling you now, he will play for England. Yeah. So that was then going back to your question about goalkeeping coaching, he knew a lot, but it wasn't until I got to QPR, because I never had a full-time coach there, but Bob Wilson, who was my coach, who was the coach at Arsenal, would come to QPR once a week for my last 2 years. So obviously he was coming and coaching me, and then going back and
then saying,
and then Bob obviously was my coach all my time at Arsenal, and he's been my best man as well. So,
so what's the first thing that stood out? So you signed for Arsenal, they're league champions. Who? Give me a couple names, and what stood out for you initially?
Yeah, as in who were there?
Yeah,
so like Tony Adams,
right?
David Rocastle,
okay,
Alan Smith, Ray Parler, Lee Dixon, Nigel Winterburn, Steve Bold. You know, like the back four. That was like a proper back four.
First thing that stood out, going into that change room, knowing that already that they've got status.
Yeah,
right.
You know, they've got status, and do you know what I noticed as well is that as good as I knew that they were, I then found out that it wasn't through just fluke or anything like that. Okay. It was through sheer hard work.
Right.
And George Graham would drill that back four like so many times in the week, and even getting like 4 and 5 against the back four, or even 6 and 7 against the back four, and I was behind, you know, and I was like, you know, I was hardly getting a save to make.
Right.
But then that's totally opposite to what had happened to me at Birmingham, because we got relegated.
Yeah.
So I'd had a lot to do. Then I got to Arsenal, and then it's almost like being an international goalie where you don't get much to do, but then you've got to be on it. You've got to be on it, like when you're required.
So you win your first season. You win the league title. But what's your memories of that? I mean, because that's, you know, when because you touched on it, when you think about doing something and then it actually happens.
Yeah.
You know what? Not that you're like, yeah, I've completed it.
No.
But what's that feeling?
I just remember taking it all in. I remember we were going out. We had to play Man United, and I think it was Liverpool were at Forest, and they had to win to stop us. Anyway, Liverpool lost or drew at Forest, and it meant that we were champions before the game. Mate, honestly, you know, that relief of thinking, we've got to go out there and beat Man United. Okay, it was at Highbury, but then that relief of knowing, you know, that we've already won it. And I remember like David O'Leary coming up to me, and he's going like, said, "Yes, you're beauty," and he went, "This will be the first of many for you."
It's wicked, though,
Just
isn't
little
it?
moments that you'd never
That
forget.
we'll never forget.
Yeah.
What was, talk to me, because listen, like I said, I went to Highbury Golf School. I was a ball boy at the Highbury Games. I want to say, I don't want to fact check, but I think that for the district or for Highbury Golf in one, we played on, I just remember it being a carpet. I just remember as a kid.
Yeah.
What was so special about Highbury?
Well, the history, like people before, and even I played there when I was at Birmingham. I played there when I was at QPR. The history of, everybody talks to you about the marble halls and things, like when you go up the steps and it's all, the flooring is marble. And then you go into the dressing rooms and there's under soil heating then, but underfloor heating, which gets left on in the summer. Amazing. So there's all that. There's all the history. And then you're going down the tunnel and it was just an iconic ground, and it was great to go. But the burning thing was the drive that I had in myself, and then after that first season, I'm like, what? What else are we going to achieve?
Saying that, so you did the double 98 and 2002.
Yeah.
So we joked off air in regards to, you did bits in your career. Do you know what I'm saying? So you're among elite company with that. Yeah. Just what's your memories of with doing that, and also what's the mindset? So you touched on it in regards to you lot was driven, and I always believe whenever there's success, there's a culture where if you can get everybody on the same page, then boy, you're a force. So what's your memories about doing that?
So it was a build-up. Obviously that first season is a right bonus because you win the league straight away. And you're like, whoa. Then it weren't until about, I think it was 93 that we won the cup double. So we won the FA Cup and the League Cup in the same season against Sheffield Wednesday, the same team. And then, so like from that, and then obviously then there's the European Cup Winners' Cup that came in 94, I think it was, and so there's little bits adding, and then Arsene Wenger joined in 96, and he's now at the end of 96, I should say, and he's now coming in hoping to change everything, which he did. He changed the whole aspect of football at Arsenal, and for him in, I think it was 97, 98, where he wins the double, the first double. That was like such an achievement, not just for him, but for us to win the double. And it's funny because Bob Wilson, as I told you, was my coach. He would, whenever there was a big game, he'd leave a little note under my gloves, and at the end of it, it always said something like, "Don't forget, I'm the only Arsenal goalkeeper to have won the double," because he won it in 71. And I was like, yeah, you're right, Bob. Yeah. then we go and win it in 98, so then I joined him, and now my little line back to him is, I've done double, Bob.
Double, flex. So how long was you with George Graham?
So George was there till 95, I think, 94, 95.
And then Wenger comes in, right?
Then Wenger comes in.
Wenger, sorry, yeah. So talk to me from player-wise, right? From having success with a manager that brought you in and then Wenger coming in. What was just your transitional in mindset?
See, you know what it's like when a new manager comes in. You've got to impress them first.
Yeah.
They've got to gain the players' respect as well, which is not often talked about. But I just remember him, saying to me, like, you're my number one. So that was, I was happy with that. Yeah. But he just changed everything. He changed the way that we looked after ourselves. The sports science side of it, the nutrition side of it, the massages, the stretching, but then most importantly, the way that we were playing. Because under George, we were a long ball team. Yeah, and we were really good at it. Yeah. And the reason I know that is I had double hernia in one season from all the balls that I was just banging into like certain areas. So he totally changed the way we played football. I'm like now rolling it out to Tony Adams, who's like dribbling and passing it, and I'm wow, Tony, I've not seen this for ages. Yeah. Just that, the fact that he did that, and then we go on to win the first double was it was massive for Arsene.
Let me ask this question, right? Because I've had managers where that transition period. So to be fair, I've had managers that it hasn't worked. So no matter the transition period where the players just haven't got it. That the players that were still there, the times where you said that default setting that you lot had, the culture, long ball, being effective, when did you know Wenger was like all right, you know what, we all got to believe him because, you know, when did y'all, as players, not just you well, for you
I know
first.
what you mean. Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And then as players.
Because they bring in all these new routines and everything.
Yeah.
And then you're thinking, well, you know, is it going to work? Is it going to make us better? You know, but I'm also missing out Bruce Rioch, because Bruce Rioch came in for a short while. You know, but that, it just didn't work. You know, it was, the job seemed too big for him.
Yeah.
So then we move on to Arsene, and he's hard to put. He was a very quiet man. So at half time, every single game was total silence for 10 minutes. What? And I mean total silence in the dressing room when we came in. You all sat down, you got your drinks, you got your energy bars, whatever you were having, and you sat down and it was silence.
Winning,
whatever,
losing, or drawing.
Yeah. There was one game where we were losing at half-time at Highbury, and the lads came in, and Pat Rice came in and started having a go at a couple of the lads. And Arsene just turned to me and went, "Pat, sit down and be quiet." In front of everybody. We were like, you know, but that's what it was like. And then Arsene would say his little bit, literally 2 minutes, out you go.
What?
I know. But then, and we're like, wow, you know, this is like a total opposite of like George Graham, where he would like rant and rave at any, you know, most of the players. Him and Wrighty used to have a competition, I'm sure, to find out who could tell each other to F off the most in a halftime dressing room.
Do you know what? Because I'm looking at it, because when you got characters in a changing room, and because football's an emotional game anyway, and especially when you got characters, they're driven by emotion. Do you know what I'm saying? So this is what I'm saying. Losing, you couldn't help but F this and to be able to have it where it's just serene silence and the trust. For me, that's. To be fair, that's the first time I'm hearing it, and that's mind-boggling. Boy, let me ask this, because I remember Ramsdale coming out saying, you know what, as a keeper, at times sometimes it's hard to concentrate.
Yeah.
What was methods that you used? So I remember sometimes you said you didn't have to do much. What's the method that, where it comes to concentrating, and where some people don't understand how hard it is to concentrate
when you've got nothing to do? You know, and I say you've got nothing to do. Okay, you're not making saves, but you've got to be in the right position every time. So my little way was, I would imagine a line, going from the middle of the goal behind me straight through me to wherever the ball is. You know, so then I would move a little. If it went that way, I would move, and that line's still going to the middle of my goal. And then if it was right in the other half, I'd be a little bit further out. If it started coming, I'd just drop back on that line. So that was my little mechanism to stay concentrated. And when Aaron came out and said that, I was like, oh no, you didn't just say that, please.
I thought, I ain't gonna lie,
was like, you don't give secrets like that away, do you?
I thought that as well. I was like, oh. To be fair, because I do love honesty, and I do love people that talk, but I was like, oh.
I know, but people won't use that as a positive. They'll always use it as a negative.
Yeah.
And, you know, so, you know, and I was, when Aaron was at Arsenal, you know, we still chatting, you know, so I was, you know, trying to help him, and I was thinking oh no, not that, you know. But you know, like for a goalkeeper, it's how you stay connected with the games. But I didn't just totally focus on, you know, you'd hear things from the fans and that, and sometimes I'd have a little laugh with them or whatever. Normally when you're winning,
it's easier to do it when you're winning.
No, you don't give it much when you're getting beat, do you? You're like, okay, you're right.
Right, so listen, one save that gets talked about, to me, I think I see it the day before yesterday, is the 2003 FA Cup Sheffield United save. But listen, it had to be just instant, but talk to me about
what is involved in that is, so when the corner comes in, there's a few like ricochets, like people trying to head it towards goal. You know, so I've gone to one position, then I've had to come back to another position for what I thought was going to be a header at goal, and then it ends up coming back across and going to Pesci Scalido, who gets like a head and shoulder on it, which is good for me because it gives me
takes off the pace
a little bit of time to. But I remember diving backwards and thinking like, I can't take this with me because I'm going in the goal.
Yeah,
you know, so that's why the scoop came, and then I scoop it out. And then I end up in the goal, and then as I look up, I see like Jagielka. I didn't know it was him at the time. I just see the Sheffield United player coming in, and he's like going to smash the rebound, and he puts it over the bar, and I was like, oh, thank God, Because if that goes in, nothing gets said about that.
Nothing gets talked about the same.
Yeah. So you always need a little bit of luck.
Yeah.
And then it weren't until like I saw it on telly. Because at Man United, they didn't have any, because it was at Old Trafford, so there was no screens or anything. So I couldn't.
Because I was going to ask you at that point, did you know your head, I'm a bad man? They see, ain't nobody can. You did. No, you know, sometimes I do a chest and I say, I'm a bad man. I'll be kind of, I'm a bad man. You did. So you didn't know how good the save was.
I was like, oh, that was decent. That.
Okay.
And then, because if you look at the save and like watch my face when I get up, it's like, proper serious.
Like you don't know.
And it's not even, I've not even got ready, I have to get ready for a corner because it's a goal kick anyway. And I remember Ashley coming up to me and saying, I don't know what he said to me, but he probably swore at me knowing Ashley, telling me how good it was. And I just didn't change. But then I saw it on TV and I was like, oh. That was good.
Yeah.
The fact that it was like right on the line, it was behind me. But it shows, because as goalkeepers, we do so much training, to cover things like that, agility, decision making, where to put the ball off your hand, because you can make saves, but if you knock it straight back into play, that can go in, So there's areas that you've got to try and get it to, and we do this all in training, because in training we train so much, whereas it's the total opposite for you lot, for your outfield players, because in matches you guys go close to exhaustion, don't you?
Well, not me. I never did, but
you would have been closer than you realise. But in a match day for a goalkeeper, I could have nothing to do. No saves or whatever, and so then. But that's why we have to do so much training to cover everything that might happen.
Let me ask, you touched on with the training and that, and we touched on where you didn't have like goalie coaches and then Arsenal. And for those that don't know, of course, goalies train elsewhere. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So did you ever feel like, not isolated from the squad, but because you didn't train, or did you? Because you didn't have a goalie coach, did you train? So was it always you trained with the team or not? Because of course, now there's big groups of goalie coaches and goalies, so and then they come in. Was there ever a process where you felt, not isolate is a bit strong of a word, but I know you know what I mean.
But it was important to get the goalie time, because if you went out at the same time as the first team and did the warm up, then you know what it's like. They're like straight into like a 5v5 or a defensive unit or whatever, and then you end up getting no goalie training. So we would always go out half an hour before. Even like when I was at Peterborough, I can remember going out a little bit earlier and doing a little bit of warm up. Birmingham was the same. You'd always go out a little bit earlier. Then with Bob, we had a proper area where we'd train and everything. It was weird because I'm coaching at Arsenal like once a week now with the young lads, with the under 18s, sometimes the under 21s. And when I first went back, it was when Aaron had signed, and I went and watched him. And as I walked onto the first team training pitches, there's like a gate, and you go through. And I looked up and I looked see where the goalies were training, like Aaron and Burnley, and a couple of the others, and they were training in exactly the same area and goalmouth that I'd done all those years. And I was just like, wow, this is like so weird. Just seeing him in the same place. In the
same places.
Yeah. And I was like, just watch out, there's a lot of my sweat in that grass.
Yeah, man. You're standing on what we built out here.
Exactly.
Talking about, so just coming back to, because I was thinking, have you seen any saves recently, or any saves that kind of be like, okay, cool, that was up there with...
Yeah. I tell you, straight away I think of Raya. Because he's making some big saves.
Yeah, I don't like it, but he is.
I know, and I see he made I think there was it was like a double save where he was arching back, he touched it onto the bar, went in the goal, got up, and somebody knocked the rebound in, and he's
tipped.
So that was a really good double save. But then this season he made an unbelievable save against Brighton, where somebody's bent it in and he's touched it, hit the bar and gone over. But with David, you get in a guy now that's so consistent, and he's got used to being an Arsenal goalkeeper. Whereas before he was a Brentford goalkeeper, he was having a lot to do. Then he came, very similar to my situation, where he's taking over from a fan's favourite in Aaron Ramsdale. So he's got that pressure to deal with, plus trying to impress the crowd, plus trying to be a good goalkeeper. And he found it hard that first season, but now, and I think it's since Aaron's gone, he's really settled into it.
How important then is it? Because I think, like you said, like Aaron's gone, so he knows he's the number one. Like, how important, just because I know as a striker, when you kind of know you're number one, not saying that you get complacent, but you're like, I'm not on edge.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But it's like, how nice is it when you know when the gaffer's going to lift the sheet up with the team on it?
And you know
you're already on it.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So how important is knowing where you stand in a team?
I think it's really, it settles you. You know, it makes you prepare even better because you know you're going to play.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, and I remember chatting to Peter Schmeichel, and he was saying that he hated having a really good second goalkeeper.
Okay.
And I was like, why? You know, because like, didn't it like push you? Or he went, no. He said, I didn't want that pressure of knowing that if I make a mistake, you know, I wanted to like go out there fully focused and knowing that I was going to be playing.
Me,
Obviously, if he has a few, 3 or 4 bad games, then it's going to be different. But just there's different mindset, you know. I was totally different because when I was at Arsenal, the club went out and bought Richard Wright for like quite a lot of money, for like I think it was about $5.5 million. Back then was a lot of money for a goalie, and I'm thinking, you know, so is he coming in to replace me or? And then I was like, okay, well, I'll show you. I'll show you what I can do. So I enjoyed that side of it, but Peter didn't want that side of it. You know, so you know, knowing that you're going to play. I remember Terry Venables coming up to me as soon as he became England manager, and he just walked up to me on the training bit. He went, "You're my number one, and I want you to know that." And it was brilliant. You know, I just felt like $1 million.
So as soon as you know, then you're like, cool. Let me know, and I'll run with it.
Yeah, you do, and you relax a little bit, which I think then makes you play better.
Makes you play better. All right, look, we know football's about margins, and especially with a keeper, when you make a mistake, it's the world knows about it. Let me ask you, so how do you deal with mistakes?
It's tough. It's the hardest thing to do because until you make like a big one, you don't know how you're going to react afterwards.
Okay.
You know, and I made, 2 or 3. But but the thing was I made a big one for Arsenal against Zaragoza. So when Naeem scored past me from quite a long way up, but that was the last minute of extra time, and I think it was like almost at the end of the season as well. So I didn't have any comeback. You know, I was like, that was it. It was done.
Yeah.
But then when you fast forward that to 2002 in the World Cup with Ronaldinho, he scores that goal, and we've still got half an hour left, and it's a knockout stage now, you know. And I'm on the pitch thinking to myself, shit, if this scoreline stays like this, am I going to get treated like Beckham did in '98? You know, those sort of things are going through your mind.
Yeah.
You know, as a player, and when the stakes are that high, you know, in the end, I was okay. You know, all right, it stayed at that. We lost 2-1. That goal cost us. But then when I got home, we landed at Heathrow, the team, and there was a load of England fans there, and then they all just started singing my name, and I was like, thank God for that. And you know, and I didn't get treated like that. You know, I was treated okay. You know, the press camp outside and all that sort of stuff. You know, but
it could be a silly question, and so of course, making a mistake for Arsenal, making a mistake for England, right? There must be different magnitude in regards to that. I say that because Arsenal's every week, England would be the period.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when you made both mistakes, or when you make a mistake for that, is the impact different?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because with Arsenal, like you say, you've probably got about 2 days before then you're going to be judged again.
Yeah.
So you make a mistake on a Wednesday, you play on a Saturday, you have a blinder.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
But do that for England, it lasts like for about a month or 2 months.
Yeah.
You know, but then what I used to do, if I made a mistake, say in a game you make a mistake in the first 5 minutes, you're like, how are you going to cope with that? Are you going to be a nervous wreck and really cost your team for the rest of the game? Or are you going to be able to hold it together and rebuild, and then maybe you might win 2-1 or whatever? And I always used to think to myself, right, so the next thing I do after I've made a mistake, even if it's a pass or whatever, like do it proper technique, even if it's a throw, make sure it's right, you know, and then just build it up like that.
Yeah.
Don't start getting into your mind of thinking, I've made that mistake, I've got to go and get that cross, I've got to make a brilliant save. Because you'll end up chasing it, and you'll probably make another mistake because you'll go for something that isn't yours. So it was always building like little bricks, brick by bit.
Did Ronaldinho mean it?
So I was told straight after the game that he didn't, but by Gilberto Silva told me because he was playing. But I said it don't matter. It still went in. And I've been told so many times that he didn't. And
he didn't, because you're my guy.
Ronaldinho,
you didn't mean it. Don't be fluky, man. You know what I'm saying? But I hear you.
What was funny though is that we were playing Soccer Aid and he was playing for the rest of the world, right? And he got a free kick in similar sort of position, and I just walked back to the goal and I just stood above that top. Go on then, see if you can do it again. And he was laughing his head off.
So like you said, like if you make a mistake in the first 5 minutes, your whole mindset is, look, I've got to put it to bed straight because there's a game to play. So, and of course, say after, so the 2-1, it's done. So, as a keeper, and this is what I was saying, I chat to Stocks, I think when we strikers miss a chance, we miss a chance. And that's just, our mentality is, you got to be there to miss it. So, we flip it into a positive straight away, even if we lose 1-0 or 0-0. When you keepers make a mistake, it's a mistake. It's right,
and
definitive.
More often than not, like with strike, you'll get another chance or two chances within that game.
Yeah.
You might not get a save to make.
Yeah.
So that's the hardest part of being a goalkeeper, and you have to wait. You have to wait for the ball to come to you. You can't actually go out and influence it. Whereas as a striker, you might think, well, I missed that chance. I might just want to get involved a little bit. I'll drop a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
That sort of, just to get yourself.
So after, how did you develop a mental fortitude to deal with it after the game? To be like, mistakes are going to happen.
Yeah.
So of course they get magnified because I'm
experience. Because you know you're going to make them. As a goalie, you make them all the way. I go back to when I said to you about Martin Wilkinson when I was at Peterborough, when he gave me a right rollicking. I was only 19, but that never left my mind, and I know what sort of mistake I made, so then you're thinking to yourself, well, don't try not to make that again, or try not to make that, but it's all experience. And the beauty of me going to Peterborough was that I went to Peterborough at the age of 19, and since then I was always a number one.
Okay.
I played all the way
as a number one.
Yeah.
So listen, of course, we was talking about England and Ronaldinho. You 75 caps.
Yeah.
For England, salute. By the way, salute. But talk to me, how? Just explain, if you can put it into words, how proud it is to represent the Three Lions,
honestly.
To captain. Like
it's incredible because of my upbringing, we were in a terraced house with no toilet or bathroom until I was 14. It was like a tin bath and an outside toilet. So my mum and dad they were hard work. My dad was a steel worker. My mum was worked in a pub. So money wasn't around. So it was coming from that to get to where I got to. Also having that rejection of being told that we're going to let you go from my favourite club. I'm still a Leeds fan now, and it's 50-50. I wear an half and half scarf when we play Arsenal, and I don't care. I wear it with pride.
Yeah.
So coming from that to then doing Euro 96, which is that picture there with Steve Stone and Steve McManaman.
I'm glad you asked, because I was going to talk. We talked about that. As a footballer at that era, did you realise the power that the England team united England through Euro 96? Because
because before we were like public enemy number one.
Yeah, nobody liked you.
We had like a little night out in Hong Kong, I think it was, where there were Gazza's dentist chair and all that sort of thing, which then more or less turned everybody against us, But after the tournament, the overriding feeling of, was that we made the England fans love the England team.
Yeah, man.
Because we got so close. But, so the best feeling I ever had in an England shirt, so I've done all that at Euro 96, but when I walked out in the World Cup in 98, mate, honestly, I got total body goosebumps.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh my God, here I am. I'm playing in the World Cup. I'm a lad from Rotherham. Like I talked about, we didn't have a lot. And after all that disappointment of being released and then rebuilding to actually play in a World Cup was
that
just...
For emotion to bottle up? What do you say? Take away? I mean, not even take away. Within the trophies you won, walking out at the World Cup.
For England, that's the best ever.
That's the pinnacle.
You know, and I'd put that above what I did at Euro 96 because I made a few saves.
Yeah, man. You was on job. England was on job. So that walking out was
Oh,
just
honestly, in a World Cup, you know, and I always say to people now, you know, like dream big, believe in your dreams because it can take you a long way. You know, that's going back to like the job that I'm doing now at Arsenal, like with the under-18s or the under-21s and that. There's quite sometimes, I've been doing it a few years now, and there's been a few times where the goalies have not been offered contracts. You know, so then now they've got to go and find a career somewhere else. You know, and I have a chat to them, and I'm like, have a look at my story. Right. They're like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, I was released at night. They're like, no way.
Yeah.
I'm like, go and read what I did. You know, because from how you feel now, it can get to
the pinnacle, to the top of the top. That's dope. All right, listen, you played with some superstars for England. Like, who impressed you when you look at it? Who impressed you? Like, who stood out?
Gaza.
Yeah.
Honestly, mate, he was so special. I would have paid money to go and watch him.
Yeah.
Because not just of his skills and all that, but the way that he would like knock players off the ball and just like little things, you know, like hand in their face, but not an aggressive hand.
Yeah, yeah.
He says, but like, you know, and I was like, why? He says, Bill, put your hand in your face. He said, you can't do anything. He says he just totally knocks you. You know, all these little tricks that he used to do and that, but he was brilliant. And then obviously I played with Thierry Henry and Dennis Bergkamp, you know, so they were like,
special, yeah.
You know, like Thierry was just, I could give him the ball outside the box, and I did often, and he would go the whole length.
Just run with it.
Yeah. Whereas Dennis was more around the opponent's penalty area. Then you got Righty, you know, who's like one of the best, most naturally gifted strikers that I've seen.
You know, I hear your story, and for me, I always say this, and this is not just because you're here. I think it's inspirational when you touched on the fact of, at 19, the paths you went, the pinnacles, just the trials and tribulations. And I do think we all got a story to say. But every time we get somebody on this, especially when we're talking about England, we talk about the first thing they notice that differs from club football training to England training. What stood out to you? Like, first, I'm talking about where you've been called out.
So my first ever call up, and I've gone into the squad with people like Glenn Hoddle, Brian Robson, Viv Anderson.
Real old school legends, dons.
You know, Peter Beardsley. I'm trying to think who the striker was then. Gary Lineker.
No.
When we go in and like, so I'm now training with Peter Shilton and Chris Woods, you know, and I'm trying to impress and that lot. And we're doing so many drills, I'm absolutely knackered. And then I have to go over and join them.
I'm doing it, yeah.
And I remember being in an 8v8 and I was like, ball's come over and it's gone to Glenn Hoddle and I've like, you know, got myself set into a great position and he's chipped me. Like, and I didn't see it coming at all, just chipped it like over my head. I was like, oh my God, like how good is he? And I was thinking like to myself, if you've got to be that good, I've got no chance.
Yeah. Are you saying, because one thing I always laugh is that keepers in finishing drills hated getting chipped. I'm talking about hated. So let me ask this. So what's whenever you got a finishing drills, you're up against the strikers and that, what's your mentality? Because I'll always say striker, I used to love it. It used to have banter with the keepers, and it used to be that, like I said, I keep coming back to Stockdale. One time we had a full-blown argument, like proper, just because he was going at our strikers and my strike was at his keepers. You know how it goes. How are you? Are you always calm? So if you're getting the better of them, you're calm. If they're getting the better,
I used to moan like mad because if it's put on for the strikers, I know that I'm going to get peppered.
Yes.
I'm going to get smacked everywhere with the ball, and I'm like get the other goalies in, you know. But what I would do, and Wrighty talks about this as well. He was like, he says like, when the goalie would try in training, he was really hard to beat.
Yeah.
because I would do like, say, about half a dozen, the first half a dozen. And then if the strikers aren't doing it realistically, if they're having too many touches to set it up nicely and then smacking it at me, I'm like, not trying. Not even diving. and right, he'd be like, goalie, just try for a few. I'd be like, oh, okay then. Yeah. And then he'd be like, and then we couldn't beat him.
The reason why I like to explain this for people to understand that, because exactly that, when a keeper's got a point to prove, so exactly that. So when when you're trying to get the confidence of the striker, it's put in for us.
Yeah.
So there's really nothing you can do,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
if you're just there for if it blocks you and hits you.
Yeah.
But when it's put on balanced and a keeper's got something to prove, for me, I think it's the greatest. I think
but then you get the best out of each other.
Exactly.
But what we used to do as well at Arsenal is he would come and do our goalkeeping training with us, not as in diving, but he would be the finisher. You know, like all the other goalies would be serving, but he would come in, and then we would sit down and have chats about what are you thinking when you're coming through 1v1 or when you've got a really quick chance. And then I would tell him what I was thinking about what I need to do.
Was it only Whitey that did this?
Yeah.
I've never heard this, but just that, I just think shows why he is and what he was, because that's attention to detail.
You know, because he would say about when he's coming through with the ball, as soon as he looks up, the first picture he sees or the first gap he sees down each side or whatever is more or less the one that he'll go for.
He will go for.
Yeah. You know, and then I was saying to him, well, that's exactly what, I'm trying to stay up as long as I can and be as big as I can so you can't see the goal. And then right at the end, I might just lean to one side to try and cover that, but don't disregard that, leave that hand there. You know, it's no use having your hand here because your body can do the same as that. Leave that hand out there in case you can tip it.
On England, who stood out in regards to finishing drill? So when you was just
early on, Gary Lineker, but I think he finished in about 94. Then after that, you'll like this one, Robbie Fowler.
Come on.
Oh, my
Natural
word.
finisher.
Oh, natural finisher. He scored 3 past me in 3.5 minutes at Anfield. What do you mean, yeah?
Yeah, sorry. There's little moments where I've got to take out here, which we have. I told you was part of that era that was just dominating. Oh, yeah.
3.5 minutes, he scored a hat-trick past me. But he was one of them strikers where he got so many different finishes. You know, he had the ping from outside the box. He had the little chip. He had the little dink over you if you come out and you went too early. You know, and then he would always be in the right space at the right time.
Do you think there's anyone that can take Pickford's position for England #1?
Not at the moment.
Nah.
No. My only worry is the other guys have not got much experience.
Okay.
And touch wood, if Jordan gets injured, we're now putting a goalkeeper into the World Cup that's hardly got any caps. And that's my only worry.
That's your only worry.
You know, it's not ability-wise, because I look at Dean Henderson, I look at Nick Pope, I look at Aaron, you look at Trafford. You know, those goalies, the only problem with Aaron and Trafford is that obviously they're not playing.
They're not playing as much, yeah.
You know, so there's, Jack Butland's playing up in Scotland and playing well on a regular basis. So it's a little bit difficult at the moment, but Jordan is way out there.
He's way out there.
Aaron was getting close when he was at Arsenal, and it was just before Raya came, actually, because he had a brilliant season, like when he made that save at Leicester.
Yeah.
And he was voted Goalkeeper of the Year by all the players, because that means a lot, doesn't it?
That's for me. I'll always say, when you're voted by your players, that for me carries.
Because I said to Ray, I said to him, what would you rather have won, like the clean sheet record, or being voted the best goalie by the players?
Yeah,
and he was
players,
that's good. He went players.
Player.
Yeah,
players.
So Aaron, he was really pushing Pickford when after that season, and then literally 5 games into the season, I think it was, and it was just after he played for England, they went and bought Raya, and it just derailed him.
Yeah. All right, so to be fair, let's talk about Arsenal. We've talked about Arsenal then, Arsenal now.
Yeah.
What's your honest take of Arsenal right now under Arteta?
They're a good team. They're a great squad. At this moment in time, there's a testing time coming up. Because of all the scar tissue that they've got from finishing second 3 times, they've now got to deal with that again. The gap's got closer. It's 4 points as we're speaking. They're lucky because they've got a couple of easier games coming up. Okay, Leeds away. The mighty Leeds. I know.
So right now, let me ask this question right now. What can put it out there?
Who needs the points the most?
Right,
I don't know.
You've got to. So Arsenal and Leeds.
Yeah.
Who are you saying for the 3 points? Because you got to be honest with us now. Arsenal lose, it goes to
Can
1 point.
Can I go draw? No.
A draw doesn't help nobody.
No, well.
So if one of them needed to win, and you was just like head over heart, heart over head, heart and heart.
Yeah. If I had to decide who, I would go Arsenal. Because...
So all that Leeds talk was just talk then?
I'm a Leeds fan. There's no doubt about that. I'm a Leeds fan. But, like for the amount of pressure and all the talk that's around, I'm desperate for Arsenal to win the league. Like Leeds, I'm sure Leeds are going to be okay. Arsenal need the points more, I feel.
Most of my people's Arsenal supporters,
Yeah.
best friends, Arsenal supporters, that just... I don't know. I said I'm going to leave for 4 months if Arsenal win the league because your fans are just...
It's not for quite a while, so I just take it.
No, it's not, because they would never let us forget it. But no, the question I feel, I actually do think, and you will understand this, I actually think it's only Arsenal that will lose this, if that makes kind of sense in what I'm saying, because, and that's the adding the pressure. So we talked about dealing with pressure, the mentality with both.
Exactly.
I just think it's only Arsenal to lose.
This is where they're at now.
Right.
They've got, they finished top of the Champions League table, which is brilliant, but we're at a place now with the Premier League where we've got to make sure that we try and extend that gap. Because if you have a slip up now, like City, they're simmering away, aren't they? They're just getting better and better and better, bit by bit. So you've got to keep your eye on them. Villa are there or thereabouts, although I don't think that they'll be a serious contender in the long run because of their squad. But Arsenal's is the team and the squad is the best that it's ever been.
I agree.
So now they've got to deliver. And when they do, once they get past that mind thing that they've got, then who knows how many trophies they'll win.
None, just maybe one. I'm hoping. No, let me ask this. So, the Premier League's changed, especially from your time in regards to keepers, distribution, pressing. What's your take towards the way it's changed? Let me hear yours first. Yeah, I've got my take.
Well,
on it.
I was watching Man United against Tottenham a while ago when they were going for the treble, back in '99 or whatever it was, and we were second place and we needed to win, which we did. But if Man United had drawn or lost, we would have won it. But I remember like flicking it on and thinking, I'll watch this a bit. And I was thinking, this is all right. This is good. I ended up watching nearly the whole game.
Yeah.
Because of the football was totally different to what it is now.
Yeah.
It was more, there was a lot more directness about it. There was crosses going in all the time. Becks and Giggsy like whizzing these crosses in. I was thinking like, why aren't we doing that now? We've gone back to like the old ways from dead balls, from corners, long throws. I think football now needs a bit more directiveness about it.
Yeah.
And it needs to be, because it's not boring. But it is a little bit.
Sometimes
I know, like with the way they come out and round and they never like play it into the striker and then make a run off him and all that. Like Gyökeres shows so many times and they don't even give it him.
Give it to him.
So it's different now, and it's not as entertaining as what it used to be. But it's, like I say, it is different because the players are fitter, the ball is faster, so there's different changes. What's
your view on modern day goalkeepers? One, we talked about Arsenal star, but what's your view? Listen, as a striker, I remember goalies being there for goalies.
Yeah.
Really good shot stoppers. Yeah. That's what, and listen, of course, football evolves, you know, and I totally get it. So let me ask, what's your view on modern day goalies?
So you can tell the good ones straight away. The ones that really celebrate shots, although Donnarumma, who's one of my favourites at the moment, was doing some like massive celebrations after some like half decent saves. Yeah, okay. And like when they do that, I'm like, come on, you're better than that. When I see goalies like when they first sign for a club, they're giving it all after they've made a save, and he's not even like a really good save. I'm like, come on, what are you doing? Like celebrate when it really means something, and so that like really annoys me. Obviously goalkeeping has changed now because of the amount of balls that the goalkeepers are having to deal with, as in like, back passes and playing out from the back and all that. And it winds me up when I get so many people like, oh, I've got this great goalie, he's like really good with his feet. And I'm like, any good with his hands? Because you're a goalie, and then even the other day was like, oh, do you ever think there'll be a day when they don't have goalies? I'm like, shut up.
What?
They'll just play like outfit. Oh, and I was like, don't be silly. So it's changed, but the fundamentals of goalkeeping is still the same. I tell you what, there is a problem with at the moment is corners. Because goalies are getting blocked in, and the guys that are doing the blocking, they're not even looking at the ball.
Okay.
So what's happened to the old obstruction rule? Because like you see like players now, they're wrestling each other in the goal mouth. That's just the outfield players, and then that's now coming into the goalkeepers. So I think something will be done about that, because it's not. For me, it's not right, that you can just go in on a goalkeeper and block him in.
You're offside. So you're offside. Let me ask, how do you deal? Because I'll always say this, and I watch it, and because I'm a product of the EFL, it's a little bit more. We don't have VAR, so it was a little bit. I look
you
at
got
it
away with a bit more.
It was. I just. That's how it was wrestling in there. It was hustle and bustle.
I wouldn't have liked to have wrestled with you. Trust me.
Wow. So let me ask. So how would you deal with that? So again, Arsenal are top tier when it comes to set pieces. So I look at it sometimes, and I was saying this with my son. I was like, I know Arsenal, but man, we used to have that all the time, because that was what EFL, and I'm not knocking it, but how would you deal with now with?
Well, you straight away, my reaction is to push other people away and that, but if you get a striker, I remember Robbie Keane doing it to Jens Lehmann, where he wound Jens Lehmann up, and then all of a sudden Jens pushed him away, and he fell over, and he actually got a penalty for it. So as a goalie, you've got to be careful, because as much as you're getting blocked, the lads aren't coming in with their arms out and trying to block you. They're just sneakily just body checking you. So as a goalie, you can't do that, because your arms have got to be up. For the cross coming in, because if you leave them by your side, the striker can hold your arms down. So you've got to be aggressive, or sometimes go into an area where you don't want to be. So go a bit further back and then make a move into where you want to be. All those sort of things, but it's tough at the moment. It really is.
To be fair, won't
yeah. Because you're getting a little nudge. It's like as you're preparing to jump, if somebody nudges you.
To be fair, I do think they do check that, because I remember, especially referees used to say, can't touch the goalie, can't touch the goalie, can't touch the goalie,
but that's out of the window now.
Yeah, man. So I get that. All right, so let me ask you now, especially we talked about the Arsenal now. Who in this current Arsenal team impresses you?
Saka, straight away.
Yeah.
Odegaard. When the players are asked about who's got the most skill and everything, they all say Odegaard.
Right.
So he's one of those players that can create. I think he's Arsenal's most creative player. In the passes that he finds, I really enjoy watching David Raya, because he's calm, and he's got a confidence about him. When you look at his story as well, I didn't realise that he came to, I think it was Blackburn when he was 16. So he's been in the English divisions right up to where he is now.
Yeah, I'm sure I played against him at Brentford.
Yeah.
I don't think I scored again. Oh, I don't know. I don't know, maybe. Yeah. No, I don't think I actually did.
But he's been through it, so he's done all the different levels.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that helps. And and then I think I look at Gyökeres, and I get frustrated at times, because some, of the chances that he misses and that, and then I look at Jesus, who you put him in that position, and he's so composed.
Yeah.
And it's but then Gyökeres has got his different attributes, where he's occupying two defenders most of the time, and I think it's a confidence thing with him at the moment, where okay, he scored last night as we were speaking, and he scored a few times before. And I think that was when Mikel left him out of the last league game. I think it was wise, because if he leaves him out without him scoring, it's even harder, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you've scored a couple of goals, and then you get left out, and then you come back in. So Mikel's handled that really well, but I think that will come more. It's his first season at this level.
Yeah.
I know he was at Coventry, and then he went abroad, but this level is tough for him.
When you watch Arsenal, especially Arsenal, and because and you touched on it, you had the likes of Henry, the likes of Ian Wright, natural finishers. When you look at Jesus and Gyökeres, I'm not taking anything away from them, but you look at it through critical eyes about like, oh, boy, like I had these finishers. What do they need to do to try and get to that level? When you look at it like that, or do you just watch it for just watching sake for them as individuals?
Yeah, I just watch it to enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. You know, sometimes you think to yourself, do they watch, you know, videos or clips from before, you know, of special strikers?
Yeah.
But then it's hard because if you're not the same body shape as them,
Yeah, it's true.
you ain't going to be able to recreate.
There was no point me watching Jesus because we built different.
No, I was the same like when Peter Shilton was in goal. Peter was like so much smaller than me, you know, and he was totally different style. Like Ray Clemence was more my size and shape, you know, so that would be somebody that I would watch. You know, although I did watch Bruce Grobbelaar. You know, the way that he kept goal, the way that he came out for crosses, took it to another level on crosses about what goalkeepers can do. You know, if they're just going to float it into the box, you can go and get that easy.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, because I think I see recently Tony Adams talking about captaincy or representation, right? And I mean, he came out and said he don't think Arsenal win a league with Odegaard as captain because, like anything, you make your captain a representation of the manager. And Arteta seems very passionate, you know, you know, and Odegaard seems very calm, collective. What's your thoughts in regards to the captaincy and of what?
I was lucky because in the teams that I was in, it didn't matter who was captain.
Right.
You know, because we had like
leaders,
and any of them could have been a captain.
Yeah.
You know, and even, you know, Tony will admit that. You know, I find it a bit weird when Tony said that because that's not a positive. That's just going to get negative press. You know, the lads really appreciate Odegaard as a captain. You know, they really like him. You know, when you look at when people like say when Odegaard's not been captain, it's been like Gabriel, and then I noticed there's one when Gabriel was captain, and he got injured, and he handed the armband, I think it was to Jesus, and Declan was still on the pitch. So like Declan's still like third or fourth choice captain at the moment. You know, I know what Tony was saying. You know, because of Declan's leadership.
Oh, was he saying Declan should be captain?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he said if you have Declan as captain, then you might. That's what.
Oh, that's what he was saying.
Yeah, you know. So you know, but you know, it just shows you that it's within the group. It's not. It's not what it looks like from outside. It's the respect that's.
But
I'm not saying that they haven't got respect for Dec.
Of course,
it's just that there's a pecking order.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you know, cultures in changing rooms anyway. Different people lead different. You've got vocal players, you know what I'm saying, that don't need an armband, and then you've got players that lead by what they do on the pitch. Just even their professionalism. I'll always say, we had a Matt Bloomfield at Wickham, and he wasn't a ranter and raver, but boy, did he lead by example. So I was, I was. Not that there's not. I hear about your captain and represents what your manager says, but you know it's about the group. So let me just put you on this. Will Arsenal win the league?
I think they do. You know, I'm so desperate for them to win the league because of all the noise. You know, and I find that there's a lot of, I don't know, it's resentment or jealousy or whatever.
Here we go, victims. Victims.
But it's true.
Gosh.
But you've got to win things. You've got to shut them up. You have got to win something.
I hope you
know,
don't.
And I was, you know, like my career was spent always proving people wrong. You know, from that age of 19. So that's where this comes in with Arsenal. Is I want them to win the league to then, you know, to have finally done it. But it's not as easy as that.
Oh, listen,
you know, as we found out, you know, what is it, 22 years since they won the league?
Yeah.
In 2004. So, you know, it's a tough challenge. But once they do it, then, you know, as I said earlier, they could go on to...
Let me ask, out of this current team, who would be one player that you would be like, I would have liked to play with?
The only one I look at is Saka.
Yeah.
But the thing is he's a left footer. So obviously he's playing on the right and he's tucking in. But then I would have to leave out, you know, like Ray Parlour or Freddie Ljungberg. You know, sometimes Mark Overmars would be over on that side.
Yeah, he played.
You know, I had Perez on the other side. You know, so when I look at there's not many of this team because they haven't proven they're not proven winners yet.
Yeah.
To be a proven winner, you've got to win a trophy, and then once they do that, then it'd be tough to put any of them in at the moment.
All right, cool. Let me ask you. So,
even the goalie.
Yeah. So the back four they're talking about now.
Yeah.
Back five with the goalie.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Do you see similarities between your era in regards to style, culture?
Yeah, aggressiveness, determination. Yeah, I do. But it's always because
they haven't got over the line yet.
They haven't got it over the line yet, and until they do, then it's hard to compare them because that back four, that old back four won 2 league titles. It won an FA Cup, a League Cup, Cup Winners' Cup. When I look at this team because they haven't proven they're not proven winners yet. Yeah. To be a proven winner, you've got to win a trophy, and then once they do that, then back in my day, any of them in at the moment. So, do you know what? One of the biggest influence signings was Dennis Bergkamp.
Why?
Because we were signing a player of Dennis Bergkamp's stature, who wasn't like past it. He was right on it. He was a marquee signing, I called him. And when we signed him, we were like, whoa, we've signed Dennis Bergkamp. Like, who else are we going to get?
Okay.
So that's where that came from. And everybody says that Bruce, he did sign when Bruce Riot was manager, but it was David Dean that got him to sign.
Yeah.
So Dennis was like the start of it. Anelka was
I've heard
frightening.
that. It's because I've heard Wrighty told a story about when he was like, whoa.
I know. Honestly, yeah. We had Dennis. We had Wrighty before that. Then it was Dennis, and then when Arsene brought in Nicholas, and Nicholas was only 17, and he was shy. Like, he didn't speak the language, but on the training pitches, he was unbelievable.
Yeah.
He was unplayable.
At 17.
Yeah, like Tony and Baldy were like getting so frustrated. They were even trying to kick him and they couldn't catch him.
Wow.
You know what it's like, you've got experienced pros that are now being embarrassed by
100%.
And then they think, oh, okay, next time
I'm going to lift him up. Yeah.
Exactly. And they couldn't catch it. He was so good. It's just like, it was such a shame that he didn't stay long enough to really, make he made a difference. In the cup. He won the double. He scored in a cup final at Newcastle at Wembley. So then I think he left after that. And then obviously Thierry came and.
When Thierry first came in, did y'all know? Because I remember them. Because I remember them saying that they had to toughen him up.
Yeah,
like, kick him up, punch him up.
He came as a bit of a wing. He was a winger, but then Arsene said, "No, I want you to play down the middle." And he found it difficult, and he went quite a few games without scoring. And then when he did, that was it. And it's. I always say to Arsenal fans and that, I go like, right, you got one choice, Henry or Bergkamp. And they're like, ooh.
So you were like the coach. Who were the culture setters?
Tony was very Arsenal.
He was very Arsenal.
Yeah. And Tony had been, through a lot at that time as well, with his addictions and stuff.
Yeah.
So he was very, very Arsenal because the club looked after him and, it worked both ways. Yeah, like the English lads, they know, like Lee Dixon, who was my roommate at Arsenal, and Martin Keown, Steve Bold, Nigel Winterburn, Merce, Perry Groves.
Yeah,
they've come up.
They were the culture. They were the backbone.
They knew what it meant to be and what George was really good at it. George Graham, because he always used to say, like, remember who you are, what you are, and who you represent. And he used to tell it. They were normally in trouble when we got that phrase said to us.
Them ones. It's like when you hear your
but
full
it's
name,
like, look after yourself, look after your club, and realise what you are.
All right, so we're going to play a ranking game. So I'm going to give you some keepers' names, and you can either say top tier, solid, or not for you. All right, don't listen. Mr. David Seaman, don't sit on the fence.
Oh, I don't.
If they're not for you, they're not for you. All right, cool. All right, here we go. The first one, Alisson,
top tier, no doubts.
Layman's,
good,
solid. All right, cool.
Got a lot. Still got stuff to prove.
All right, cool. Ramsdale,
good. It needs to be playing.
Raya.
Top tier. Because he's proven it.
Emi Martinez.
Top tier. Even top tier.
Yeah. Donnarumma.
Top tier.
Vicario.
Oh, good. I don't like the way that he celebrates after saves and stuff.
So
and needs to be a little bit more consistent.
And Keller.
Good. Because he's moved to a new club. Being a number one is totally different to what he's used to. So you've got to respect that. Yeah, good.
Who's the most underrated player in the league right now?
Whoa.
Yeah, I know.
Player? Magoli.
Yeah, I know. That's a tough one, yeah, people them.
Well, straight away I go to Arsenal.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think Martinelli's underrated at Arsenal.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what? I can see that.
Yeah.
He's frustrating though.
Yeah, I know.
But I can see it.
He's got a lot. He really has.
All right, let me ask you this question. You played up against a plethora of strikers in your time. Name me one striker that you would love to be one-on-one against.
Well, it happened. It happened in Euro 96. I was one-on-one with Dennis Bergkamp.
Did he score?
No. Saved it down to my left.
Let him
when
know.
we beat them 4-1.
Let him
we
know.
beat Holland. Oh, don't worry, I did.
Oh.
It was at Arsenal at the time as well. And I remember like going out and for probably not many times that I knew who was coming through, you know, because you're looking at the ball and I knew it was Dennis.
Yeah.
And I just had it in my head like, stay up. And then right at the end, I knew he liked just little side foot. And I just got a hand on it. And it was, and it was like, I think it was we were like 1-0 or 2-0 up. And it was an important save, but you know we went on to absolutely
smash them.
Yeah,
ooh, good game. All right, cool. This is like the wisdom and legacy section of the Beast Mode On podcast. Let me ask you, when people say David Seaman or look back at David Seaman, what would you like them to be? All right, cool. This is what I left with them.
Ponytail.
I remember that. Both of them have big ass hands. The three things I remember: ponytail, big tash, big hands.
Well, yeah, but yeah. So like ponytail, tash, big hands, and hopefully someone that you know they felt that they could have a laugh with and have a chat with.
Dope.
From what I came from, you know, I enjoy life and I enjoy meeting people.
Let me ask, if you could pick one moment of your career that defined you, what would it be?
I want to say going to Peterborough.
Okay.
Because that set me back on the right track. And then also the decision I made to leave QPR for the reasons that we talked about, as in wanting to see how good I could become. Yeah, I think them two are big in my career along my pathway.
If you could replay one game from your past, what game would it be?
Euro 96 semi-final against Germany.
Talk to me.
And Gaza scores instead of just missing it by that much.
Yeah.
Because then we'd probably go on to win the tournament. That would have been epic.
Yeah.
It's the only regret I've got is not winning anything with England.
Okay.
You know, because you know it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Still is been a long time. But I just feel that, like, if we win anything with England, it's just going to be so good.
You know, I look back at it now and at that time, and I say it brought the country together. Euro 96.
Yeah.
It was just Gazza's goal, Sheringham Shearer. It just brought. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
I get so many people coming up to me in the street and they just walk up to me and they shake my hand and they say, "Thank you for the memories. Thank you for Euro 96."
Why do you think England ain't a bit like Arsenal, just being able to get over the line?
I know.
You know what I'm saying?
It's hard. It's just there's maybe the pressure, you know, because it's been so long since '66. You know, it's been so long, so that pressure builds, and every time, even when I was playing, it was like, "Oh, are we going to win it? Are we going to win it?" Like, why ask that question? Why build that pressure up? You know, and then there was always the stories that were being held back for when we were actually in tournaments, and then they'd batter us with certain stuff in the papers and that, you know, which was always negative. It's like they need more positiveness around them.
Let me ask, you've just touched on that, right? So you was part of an era where it was newspapers. Get your information, newspapers. If you wanted to find out, it was the newspapers that you lot was on a night out. If bad results, it was newspapers.
Yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
today's day and age, it's, brother, by the time it's happened, 30 seconds, it's already plastered all over social media, right? And everybody's got an opinion.
Exactly.
That, how would a David Seaman have coped in today's era back then?
The same way that I dealt with it back then. Don't have to read it.
But don't you think
you don't have to read it, because if you're looking at negative press or negative social media, if you know that that's going to affect you, why are you reading it?
But okay, and I understand that. But let's say, so this era now is, I'm not saying you post a picture, like you post a picture, whatever it is, on your gram. And it's not like you're going to look for it, but people look for you.
Yeah.
How would, and again, you mentioned it, like when a manager is talking about goalkeeping mistakes, you're like, brother,
what do you know?
What do you know?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if people are coming on under your post, and you're not searching for validation, you're just, look, I'm posting a picture or I'm interacting with, how would that, people that they've got no clue about football and they're armchair fans, how would you have dealt with it? Or would you have just not even had a social media? Would you not even had an Instagram?
No, because like you use social media for lots of different reasons.
Yeah.
And nowadays, my only thing is my advice would be to players is, if like some of the comments, if there's, say you've got 1,000 comments, and like 2 of them are negative, you'll remember them too.
Yes.
I guarantee you.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So if that has a really negative effect of you on match day, don't look at it on match day. Because it will affect you.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I was at the stage where I'd be reading the papers in the morning before a game, and I've got a reporter saying whatever, I'm too old, or time you retire, blah blah blah. And I'd be like, so I just stopped reading.
You just stopped reading it.
Yeah. There's preparation. Preparation for a match day is so vital.
100%.
Because you've got to be so right in here. Even if there is a load of shit flying around, get that right on match day.
We asked everybody that comes on, what does beast mode on mean to you?
It means fun, because you are always fun.
Hey.
And your smile is a good smile. I thought I had a good smile, but you've got an even better
smiles,
one.
don't we? Real smiles, no real smiles.
As soon as when they asked me, they asked, I was like defo.
Yo.
Because I've met you before.
Yeah, man.
And we've had fun, and it's always nice.
You know what? For me, and this is not me blind smoke, for me, you're football royalty to me, and I grew up in an era of, and I'll always say, don't get twisted, you played for Arsenal and I hated you to play for Arsenal. I won't but for me, you're what you aspire to be, because you watch the greats, and I've met you a few times now, and for me, you are, even though I did say Alisson was the best in the Premier League here, biased in that, but like I'll come back and finish on saying that hands down, you are arguably one of the best keepers this country has produced. You know
Thanks,
what I'm saying?
mate.
And thank you. I can
Pleasure,
sit down and
pleasure,
probably
mate.
chop it up with you forever, but blessings on blessings.
We'll do it again when Arsenal have won the league, yeah?
Oh, gosh. We'll do it from while I'm away, because I ain't going to be here. Blessings, brother. Love,
Brilliant.
man. Thank you, brother.